Joining us now is a senior member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Republican Marco Rubio. Senator, thank you so much for your time tonight. You've seen the harrowing images. We've heard the heartbreaking stories from parents whose children are being held hostage. What should the U.S. government be doing right now to help Israel?
Well, first, like everybody else, our thoughts, our prayers, and our heartache is with these families that are having to see these images online in real time. I just can't imagine what that must feel like or what that's like. I think that the most important role the U.S. has to have right now is support, direct and moral and diplomatic and international support on behalf of Israel to make abundantly clear to their enemies that we're going to stand with Israel and we're going to provide them whatever they need to win. And the good news is that, unlike some of the challenges we've seen with Ukraine and so forth, the U.S.-Israeli defense arrangement is codified. We actually passed a bill, my bill, back in December of 2020, that actually puts in place, that gives the administration authority from now through 2028 to spend a minimum or to be involved in a minimum of over $3.3 billion a year in assistance. So they already have the authority to do a lot. The Israelis are also very capable. They're not asking and never have asked and never will ask us to send American soldiers. What they basically will need is resupply. Some of that's already been pre-positioned before all of this, so that's good. But the second most important thing is trying to prevent this from escalating into a broader conflict. And that's where the messaging that's going on right now through Qatar, through Egypt, through all these other nations to Iran is so important. And the message needs to be, if the U.S. is attacked or this thing is escalated that implicates whether it's U.S. servicemen in the region, servicewomen in the region, or facilities in the region, whether it's Iran directly or through their proxies, we're going to hold Iran responsible. We're going to consider it an attack by the Iranian state, and we will respond in kind. And that is really critical here, because what you don't want to see is this devolve into a second front from Lebanon or from the West Bank, but primarily from Lebanon, because that injects the level of danger here that goes even higher.
You've called for Hamas to be eradicated and for Israel to respond to this attack disproportionately. How do you do that with Hamas now threatening to execute hostages if Israeli airstrikes continue without warning?
Yeah, look, there's no good options here, but there's only one that actually achieves the purpose that Israel needs. You cannot coexist. You cannot live near this level of depravity, this level of such a sinister, this level of evil. These are people that deliberately targeted. These terrorists deliberately targeted teenage girls, children, women, the elderly. They deliberately targeted them. And then did not just for murder and rape and all these other horrific acts, but then, bringing their bodies back and dumping them in the streets of Gaza so that the crowds can then defile their lifeless bodies. This is a level of depravity you simply can't coexist with. If these guys are not eliminated, these people are not eliminated, they will do this again at an even higher level. And unfortunately, in that neighborhood, it sends a message to others. If they got away with this, there are things we can get away with. It will encourage future attacks with much more horrifying impact. I mean, Hezbollah's military capabilities are substantially greater than what Hamas has, and what you would be encouraging there. I don't think this is horrifying. I mean, what's going to have to happen here truly is horrifying. We have to prepare ourselves for that. But there literally is no other option at this point, especially since Hamas uses civilians, children, others as human shields, and now hostages.
There is concern Americans are among those hostages. What can you tell us about that? And how would the U.S. approach change if Hamas makes it clear to the world that they do have Americans?
Well, I think the assumption is they have Americans. We don't know the numbers. They're working hard to make that confirmation. We know Americans are among the dead. And I do think that's a calculus here that heightens an already heightened level of interest in all of this. But at the end of the day, there were a bunch of other foreign nationals, too. Those nations need to step up and be involved in speaking out against this as well. Look, when you go in and basically say, I'm going to target a rave concert, villages and settlements and things of this nature, that we know they didn't attack IDF outposts per se. They didn't go head-to-head with the defense forces. They deliberately targeted civilians to inflict psychological damage and fear on the population, perhaps under the theory that Israel was going to curl up into the fetal position and retreat or give in. And I think what they're going to be faced with now is a disproportionate response. But I say this to you, I don't say this lightly. I'm not trying to talk tough or the bluster. I'm just saying I don't know if Israel has any other option at this point but to completely eliminate Hamas as a viable entity in Gaza. They have no choice but to do that. And that is going to come at a tremendous cost and price, horrifying cost and price, on all sides of this, by the way, including to Israel. They've acknowledged this. And there's some very difficult and painful days ahead, and not just for those involved, but for those of us watching, because no one wants to see this. But this is the situation we find ourselves in. It's a tragic one, but the price of not doing anything and not eradicating these monsters is far higher.
But do you really think that it's possible to eradicate it, right? Even if it's not specifically a group of people, but the ideology?
Well, the ideology, what exactly, the ideology is the destruction of the Jewish state. Can we eradicate an evil ancient poison like anti-Semitism? No. It's existed forever, it continues to exist, but we have to try to defeat it. We have to try to diminish it. And there's a difference between people who have an ideology that they hate Jews or they hate Israel, and people who have those feelings and have weapons, and have guns, and have missiles, and have guided munitions, and have drones, and have paragliding killers that come in and target civilians. And that's what we're talking about here. You may not be able to defeat hate, unfortunately, because hate is part of the human condition. But what you want to prevent is that hate becoming armed and capable of carrying out action on the basis of that hate. Look, this is a terrible thing. I mean, there's no way around it. The human tragedy all the way around. But it is the reality of the world as it is, and it needs to be confronted, or it will only spread and grow, not just more capable, more daring.
The Army Secretary is saying Congress is needed for additional funding for Israel. If an aid package had to be rushed through, the House can't take it up until it has a speaker. What are you telling your Republican colleagues in the House on that front?
Well, first of all, as I said, back in 2020, we passed a bill. Chris Coons, a Democratic senator, and I passed a bill that actually pre-authorizes aid to Israel. So those authorities already exist. They're already in place. They are in place through 2028. It sets a floor of $3.3 billion a year. And that's been building, and it actually, Congress can go higher and appropriate an even higher number, but they already have transfer authority, loan guaranteeing authorities, and the $3.3 billion minimum that's already built in statute. So I don't think they're going to face some of the same challenges that we have with Ukraine. Now, it may come a point where we may need to do more than $3.3 billion in transfers or what have you, or just to replenish our own stocks. But we have ourselves a little bit of time because they have these existing authorities, unlike what we faced in Ukraine. That's why I'm so happy that we were able to pass my bill back in December of 2020 and put that in place. It, in essence, codified the 10-year agreement that President Obama signed with Israel in the last months of his presidency back in 2016. We put it in statute precisely because we feared that there would be this kind of multifaceted attack on Israel, and Congress would not be able to move fast enough to get the aid there. So I think that's good. I think that's been acknowledged by the administration. They have a lot of authorities already. We may need to do more as this plays out. But again, what Israel's not asking us to fight on their behalf, but they may need resupply at some point. Some of that's already been pre-positioned as a result of this bill and that memorandum. And so that's the good news in all of this. But we may need to do more down the road, and I think that support will be there.
You're a member of the Congressional Gang of Eight, which receives highly classified briefings from top officials. Of course, we know you can't share that information. But broadly speaking, is this the type of attack that the U.S. intelligence should have seen coming?
Well, I don't want to comment on what we should have seen. Here's what I know, and I can tell you with full confidence. There's no mystery that Hamas had the intent and the growing capability to do something like this. What I think the Israelis themselves have admitted is they didn't know it was going to happen. They didn't know it was going to happen now. But this is a regular ongoing threat, both from Hezbollah and from Hamas, that Israel knows that it has been facing. They've acknowledged that they were caught by surprise and were not postured. And they have, after the Yom Kippur War, for example, they conducted an inquiry for years after that happened to see how it was that they were caught off guard. And I know they will do that again now. But right now they're in the middle of a war, and they need to win that war before they can go back and sort of acknowledge that. I think, obviously, we'll have to look at our own systems and see whether we missed something or whether we're deficient in some place or whether our analysis was wrong. I think that's a very valid inquiry because there are still ongoing threats that we want to know about ahead of time. Intelligence is never going to be perfect, and sometimes you go back and you see indicators that maybe the analysts didn't put together all the pieces of the puzzle. But right now, I think the focus in Israel, rightfully, is on winning this war because they need to win it, and then figuring out what went wrong after the fact. And obviously, we'll to some extent have to do the same in our own intelligence systems.
What do you say to those who are critical of the role the U.S. has played in recent years, who say the U.S. exacerbated tensions in the region through actions advocated by people like you who supported, for example, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and not involving a Palestinian voice in the Abraham Accords negotiated by former President Trump? Your response to those critics?
Well, that's not why this is happening. They didn't murder women. First of all, there's no excuse for murdering civilians, going in and deliberately targeting teenage girls out in the desert to rape them and murder them. So there's no excuse for that. But number two, I would say that that's not why any of this is happening. Hamas is not attacking because they want an embassy. Hamas is not attacking because they want to be part of the Abraham Accord. Hamas is attacking because their organizing principle, the reason why they exist, their stated purpose for existing, is they want to destroy the Jewish state. They do not want Israel to exist as a Jewish state. They want that to be a Muslim country populated by people like them. That's their stated goal. That's Iran's stated goal. And these attacks are designed not to militarily defeat Israel, but to destroy its economy, drive people out of there, destroy its relationships internationally, and cause Israel to collapse from within. That is their stated goal. That is the reason why they're attacking. This is not over land. This is not because they want Gaza to have economic opportunity. It's because they want to destroy the Jewish state. That's not me saying it. That's their stated mission. That's why they exist. That's always been why they've existed. And that's why these attacks are happening.
Senator Marco Rubio, so appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.